A great shift in the Middle East. After 30 years, the US-Israel alliance and the Russia-Iran alliance, the bloody winds blowing from the Middle East, the world's powder keg war is not just a simple fight. What is the hidden truth behind the conflict between Iran and Israel? The hidden history is now revealed.
Hello, this is Bichelin. Currently, beyond Bitcoin, the biggest risk that even stock investors are paying close attention to is likely the Middle Eastern war between Iran and Israel. While the US presidential election, employment, and interest rates are important, the biggest threat to the global economy, along with the Russia-Ukraine war, is the heated conflict between these two Middle Eastern countries. Numerous media outlets and experts are covering this issue. In the end, I think this is what our investors are most curious about. Why are they fighting? What are they fighting for? How long will they keep fighting? How should I manage my assets in response? And in the worst-case scenario, how likely is the conflict to escalate further? These are probably your biggest questions. I've prepared today's video to cover everything you need to know about the Middle East issue, so you won't have to look anywhere else. Of course, I'll explain it simply, so trust me and follow along. Let's start the video. Now, let's dive into why and how this war started. Let's take a quick look at a previous video. I can't say for sure whether there will be a rebound or not, but it's important to fully understand this issue. By the end of this, you'll have gained some insights into the war, so let's dive into it in an engaging way. First, to get a proper insight into this war, you'll need some background knowledge. Please bear with me as I use a bit of direct and everyday language with some strong expressions to help explain things clearly. Iran and Israel weren't always countries that had a bad relationship. The relationship between the two began to deteriorate in 1989 when a new leader emerged in Iran. From 1989, Ayatollah Khamenei, who started governing Iran, was not only deeply devoted to Islam, but was a fanatic. After becoming the leader, he began turning Iran into a strictly Islamic state. It was also after Khamenei took power that Iranian women started wearing hijabs regularly. In Islam, there are two main sects, Shia and Sunni. Just like Christianity, where churches and cathedrals differ in practice, Islam also has distinct sects with their own characteristics. The new leader of Iran believed that even among the Islamic sects, Shia was the best, and he wanted the entire Middle East to follow the Shia Islam that he trusted. The only country in the Middle East that doesn't follow Islam is Israel. Israel is a nation of people commonly known as Jews, who practice Judaism. To Khamenei, the leader of Iran who was so devoted to Islam, Israel seemed like the devil. As you all know, Israel has close ties with the Western countries, including the United States. When news broke that Iran was developing nuclear weapons, Western countries conveyed their criticism and pressure on Iran's nuclear program through Israel. How do you think Khamenei of Iran reacted? He probably thought, wow, now the devil is even meddling in our affairs? I need to get rid of them. However, Iran and Israel are geographically distant countries. To send tanks and troops for an attack, they would need to cross this long distance, but the countries in between had no desire to fight with Israel, so they didn't cooperate by allowing passage for war between the two. Yes, this is the part. Between Iran and Israel, there are several countries. Among them, the only country in the Middle East that can rival Iran in terms of landmass is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has a much larger territory than Iran, and boasts an economy that exceeded $1 trillion in GDP in 2023. It holds the undisputed #1 position in GDP in the Middle East, and it also ranks as the top country in terms of economic power within the region. In 2023, US President Joe Biden took the lead in pushing for an economic peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. While the long history of the Middle East is tangled with various interests, Saudi Arabia and Israel were envisioning a bright future together, agreeing to stop fighting and maintain a peaceful relationship moving forward. At the time, Iran could not have been pleased with the situation. To put it in an analogy, imagine Iran as China, Israel as South Korea, and Saudi Arabia as North Korea. From China's perspective, the idea of North Korea and South Korea uniting wouldn't be welcome. Likewise, from Iran's perspective, this was far from desirable. So just as Israel and Saudi Arabia were about to shake hands, Iran incited the militant groups it had been supporting to attack Israel. As a civil war broke out amidst the diplomatic talks, Israel had no choice but to leave the negotiating table, prioritizing the handling of the war within its own borders. In 2023, Israel, caught off guard, suffered a tragedy with 1,200 deaths and over 250 hostages taken. What happened to Israel's leader, Netanyahu, who failed to respond promptly and hesitated right after the first attack. Israel has a multi-party system where power is evenly distributed among 8 political parties. However, it's not exactly a typical multi-party system, as 7 out of the 8 parties are right-wing. In 2023, Israel's leader Netanyahu faced strong criticism from the 7 right-wing parties for his delayed response to the Hamas terrorist attacks and his lack of decisive retaliation. Public opinion also strongly condemned Netanyahu's incompetence. Moreover, Prime Minister Netanyahu had been on trial for corruption charges since 2020. In 2023, disappointed by his incompetence against Hamas, Israeli public opinion shifted to frustration, with many voicing that Netanyahu should quit the war effort and head to prison instead. Netanyahu, in order to recover his plummeting approval ratings and secure a favorable outcome in his trial, had to seize this opportunity to achieve a significant victory and win back the hearts of the people. The first reason for this war is Israel's leader Netanyahu, aiming to recover his approval ratings and public support as he faces potential imprisonment. In an effort to save his political career, Netanyahu launched a ruthless retaliation against Hamas, causing tens of thousands of casualties, more than 10 times the 1,200 deaths from the initial attack. During this process, Netanyahu's approval ratings actually rebounded, and the people cheered. The more Netanyahu attacked militant groups, the stronger his position became, and he continues to prolong the war. However, it's unlikely that he is continuing the war and spending such massive resources just to enjoy his popularity. Israel has clear objectives it seeks to achieve through this war. There are 2 major ones. The first is the population issue. Israel's current population is estimated to be around 9.6 million, with approximately 1.3 million of them being Haredi. What is Haredi? As I mentioned, Israel follows Judaism, and Haredi is a sect within Judaism. Just like in Korea, where some religious groups refuse military service and choose imprisonment because of their belief that killing is forbidden, Haredi is a religious group with a unique doctrine. This group places great importance on spending the majority of their lives studying Jewish scriptures. They tend to engage in very little economic activity, and following the belief that having many children is a blessing, they maintain a high birth rate, with an average of 6 to 7 children per family. That's right. The men spend their time studying Jewish scriptures, so they do not participate in economic activities. With an unrealistically high birth rate of 6 to 7 children per household in today's society, Israel's population is growing exponentially. According to statistics, in 30 to 40 years, by around 2060, Israel's population is expected to be at least 15 million, and possibly up to 20 million. By around 2060, the population share of the Haredi group, which does not participate in economic activities, is expected to exceed 30%, with the remaining 70% of the population experiencing a declining birth rate similar to other developed countries. There is growing concern about a highly unbalanced economic system. The shrinking younger population will eventually have to bear the entire burden of welfare spending for the elderly and the Haredi, creating a potentially unsustainable situation. Even without doing anything, the future looks bleak, but if militant groups are constantly firing missiles, Israel is bound to be even more troubled. Therefore, Israel sees this as an opportunity to dismantle all the threatening groups in the region and, beyond that, to definitively settle matters with Iran, which has been supporting these militant groups. Amid a growing population and a precarious economic situation, Israel sees the need to eliminate the surrounding threats during this opportunity. This is the second reason for the current war. However, there is another issue in Israel that is directly tied to its rapidly growing population. As the population doubles, the problem arises of how to provide enough water for all these people to drink. Israel, according to a study by the World Resources Institute, is classified as one of the top 10 countries in the world facing severe water shortages, alongside nations in North Africa. Due to Israel's naturally arid climate, the country receives very little annual rainfall, and as a result, it lacks rivers and lakes within its territory that can provide sufficient drinking water. Israel relies heavily on the Sea of Galilee, located in the northern region, and has recently begun providing drinking water through a process called seawater desalination, where seawater is drawn in, its salt and impurities are removed, and it is converted into drinking water. Exactly. These seawater desalination facilities are concentrated in a specific area, and the Sea of Galilee, Israel's only source of fresh water, is located in the northern part of the country. That's correct. The northern region of Israel, which has been making headlines recently, is where Hezbollah is stationed, and it's also the area that has been the target of Hezbollah's concentrated missile attacks. If the seawater desalination facilities in the northern region are attacked, it would be tantamount to choking off Israel's lifeline. Since the Sea of Galilee and the desalination facilities are within the missile range of the militant group Hezbollah, securing this area is crucial to removing a significant future threat to the nation. Additionally, due to recent airstrikes by Hezbollah in the northern region, tens of thousands of Israeli residents have fled abroad. It is a national priority to reclaim and secure this region as soon as possible, allowing the refugees to safely return to their homes. Driving out Hezbollah, which poses a threat to the northern region, Israel's only source of fresh water, and securing the safety of both the water supply and the residents in the north. This is the third reason why the war must continue. To summarize, the reasons why Israel is pushing forward with this war are as follows. The primary motive for Netanyahu is to restore his approval ratings and public support, especially as he faces imprisonment, which makes it difficult for him to stop the war. In order to maintain future power, Netanyahu needs to take this opportunity to eliminate external threats amidst a growing population and a fragile economy. Additionally, he must drive out Hezbollah, which threatens the northern region, Israel's only source of fresh water, and secure the safety of both the water supply and the residents in the north to gain public support. So, in simple terms, if the reasons for the war are resolved, the fears and concerns about the war should come to an end. The question is, how much progress has Israel made in achieving the objectives of the war that I previously explained? I found a short video that illustrates the current state of the war. Let's take a quick look. After Hamas attacked Israeli territory in 2023, causing 1,200 casualties, Israel mobilized F-15 and F-16 fighter jets, along with F-35 Lightning stealth fighters, to neutralize Hamas's defense systems and launched a fierce assault. Through drones like the Heron and Eitan, Israel conducted precise strikes on key military facilities. By deploying advanced modern weapons such as the M270 multiple rocket launchers, Popeye long-range air-to-surface missiles, and Spice-guided bombs, Israel caused over 40,000 casualties among Hamas forces, demonstrating their military might. In the process of driving out Hezbollah from the northern region, which Israel must reclaim to secure its water supply and bring back displaced residents, Israel carried out drone and rocket strikes to assassinate commanders. They also used fighter jets to drop hundreds of 2,000-pound, about 900 kilograms, bunker busters on an underground bunker where Hezbollah's supreme leader and over 30 of his top officers were gathered, completely destroying the facility buried more than 20 meters deep on the 7th underground floor, killing the commanders. Was forced to switch from digital to analog communication devices, commonly known as pagers. Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, manipulated this situation, controlling the production process of the pagers. They planted bombs in the pagers used by key officials, detonating them simultaneously, leading to their annihilation. This demonstrated Mossad's superior intelligence capabilities and instilled fear that Israel could carry out any action at will without U.S. intervention. By successfully intercepting over 300 missiles from Iran using their advanced Iron Dome defense system, Israel showcased its war capabilities throughout the Middle East, clearly signaling that they are prepared to respond mercilessly to any future threats against them. In the process, Israel has decimated Hamas, wiped out Hezbollah's command and control, crippling their combat capabilities, and extended control beyond northern Israel to the southern front of Lebanon. As a result, Prime Minister Netanyahu's approval ratings have reached their peak. It seems that Israel has largely achieved most of its objectives. At this point, the remaining concern would likely be retaliation against Iran. If the damage caused by the missile Iran launched on October 1st is overlooked, all of Netanyahu's accomplishments over the past year could be undone. Thus, an Israeli airstrike on Iran seems almost inevitable. So, what kind of attack might we expect? As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the countries between Iran and Israel do not wish to cooperate in a war between the two nations. Therefore, just as they did when attacking Hezbollah and Hamas, Israel flying its fighter jets through the airspace of neutral countries and engaging in combat is not something these countries desire. Therefore, rather than deploying ground forces for a land battle or using fighter jets for aerial engagements, the attack would likely involve long-range missile strikes targeting key facilities. The greatest concern revolves around the potential attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. However, Iran's nuclear facilities are located deep within mountain ranges, and destroying them would require a large number of bunker-buster missiles weighing over 900 kilograms, similar to those used in the assassination of Hezbollah's leader. Israel does not possess such missiles in large quantities. Currently, U.S. President Joe Biden is unlikely to provide additional bunker busters, as he does not want the war to escalate further. Supporting such an attack would also be seen as endorsing nuclear warfare, making it highly improbable that he would make that decision. Therefore, attempting to destroy the nuclear facilities with conventional missiles would be highly ineffective compared to the resources deployed, making this option unlikely and best ruled out. It seems more likely that the target would be military or oil refinery facilities. On October 9th, Israel's defense minister visited the U.S. Pentagon, hoping for a favorable negotiation outcome. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu took a firm stance, stating that no agreement would be made without U.S. approval for an attack on Iran. Given this position, the possibility of an airstrike on oil facilities should be seriously considered. Thus, the likelihood of Israel targeting Iran's oil facilities is quite high. The reasoning can also be found elsewhere. From the start, the U.S. has not had good relations with Iran. As a result, due to numerous U.S. sanctions, Iran has faced significant restrictions in exporting oil to the global market. While Iran's oil production only accounts for 4 to 5% of the world's total, 91% of Iran's oil exports go to China. This represents a massive proportion for a single country. If the Israeli military strikes Iran's oil facilities and causes damage, it could also create problems for China's economy. One might speculate whether the U.S. is hoping for such an outcome. Now, assuming the attack on Iran's oil facilities is a given, let's consider the potential consequences. This is where things become ironic. To understand this situation, we need to look closely at Iran. Iran is unique in that it has two leaders. There is the president and there is the supreme religious leader. And another unique aspect is that the president of Iran does not have command over the country's military. The authority to command the military rests with the supreme religious leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Another unique point is that Iran has two military forces. There is the regular Iranian army, and then there's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which you often hear about in the news. When Supreme Leader Khamenei seized power through a coup in the past, the special forces he used as his personal bodyguards were the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. As Supreme Leader Khamenei's power grew stronger, surpassing that of the president, the military strength of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps also came to overpower the regular Iranian army. You might be wondering, why are we talking about the IRGC when discussing the possibility of Israel attacking Iran's oil facilities? Exactly. The IRGC, which Khamenei originally nurtured as his personal guard, has now grown too large. In other words, he has raised a tiger cub that has become too powerful. The IRGC has grown beyond just a military force, now influencing the entire Iranian economy. They hold stakes in and control sectors like oil, gas, telecommunications, and distribution, effectively becoming a dominant corporation within Iran, and the oil facilities that are now emerging as a target for Israel are part of the IRGC's assets. So from this point forward, the nature of the war is no longer Iran versus Israel, but rather the IRGC versus Israel. Since it's hard to predict how the IRGC will respond to being attacked, it would be wise to keep these risks in mind when making investment decisions. So, what are the chances of the worst-case scenario, a full-scale war or a Middle Eastern war unfolding? Fortunately, this possibility seems very unlikely. Just looking at Saudi Arabia last year, through a peace agreement with Israel, Saudi Arabia aimed to achieve economic development. The Neom city, often mentioned in the news and spearheaded by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, represents Saudi Arabia's new venture for economic growth. In 2020, several Middle Eastern countries, including the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, opened up their economies through the Abraham Accords, which were economic agreements made with Israel. As seen with Qatar's hosting of the World Cup, many Middle Eastern countries are now prioritizing economic gains over religious doctrines, with this shift becoming increasingly evident. As a major example, in the past, if Israel had launched such a brutal attack on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, many religious countries in the Middle East would have quickly joined the conflict, causing chaos. However, now these nations are calling for peaceful resolutions and are refraining from joining the war. Thus, the likelihood of surrounding countries eagerly jumping into the conflict seems low, as the overall atmosphere in the Middle East has changed significantly compared to before. So, what about the possibility of Iran declaring a full-scale war? As mentioned earlier, bringing tanks is practically impossible due to the long distance and the fact that most of the path to Israel is desert terrain. Additionally, no Middle Eastern country would open its borders for such a conflict. What about an airstrike using fighter jets? There is an enormous disparity in air power between Iran and Israel. A prime example of this can be seen in the recent Russia-Ukraine conflict, where 31 of the latest third-generation Abrams tanks supplied by the U.S. to Ukraine faced off against 1,200 second-generation T-72 tanks from Russia. This illustrates how generational differences in modern weaponry can lead to significant, often surprising outcomes. Iran has around 100 third-generation fighter jets, including F-14s and F-4 Phantoms, as well as about 50 fourth-generation fighter jets, such as MiG-29s and F-5 Tigers. Israel, on the other hand, operates around 224th generation F-16 fighter jets, about 84th generation F-15I jets, and 27 5th generation F-35 stealth bombers, at least as far as is publicly known. The U.S. also has its first fighter squadron, equipped with F-15s and F-16s stationed in Israel, making any comparison of combat capabilities nearly impossible. Even Iran acknowledges that a full-scale war using their air force would be virtually impossible. That leaves only a naval transport operation. However, the route through the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea is already under surveillance by the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Facing off against the Fifth Fleet would be tantamount to a suicide mission, which is why many experts believe this is also impossible. So, what's the conclusion? The likelihood of the conflict escalating into a full-scale war is low. However, during a series of provocations involving long-range missile attacks on each other's oil facilities, the markets could experience significant volatility. Of course, there are rumors that Iran might attack neighboring oil-producing countries or is preparing to launch nuclear weapons. However, such actions would essentially lead to their downfall in modern society, so we can largely rule out that possibility. So, let's draw the final conclusion. Israel has largely positioned itself favorably by addressing most of the key issues, such as Prime Minister Netanyahu's political goal of increasing approval ratings, overcoming water shortages, and securing peace in the northern region. With numerous wartime achievements, like the pager bombings, the elimination of Hezbollah's leadership, and the destruction of Hamas, Israel has successfully demonstrated its ruthlessness and combat capabilities throughout the Middle East. The final task remaining is to restore its pride through retaliation against Iran's last attack. While the chances of a full-scale war are low, we should be prepared for temporary market fluctuations caused by missile exchanges. The U.S. is currently approaching its presidential election, and with President Joe Biden nearing the end of his term and facing a lame duck period, the ability to restrain Israel has significantly weakened. Israel, regardless of whether Trump or Harris comes to power, is likely to prolong the war until the U.S. presidential election ends in order to secure as many gains as possible and position itself favorably for future negotiations. This content has been composed by referencing opinions from Middle East experts, war analysts, and reports from influential international media outlets. Since this will be viewed by a large audience, I've avoided including unfounded theories circulating on social media, so some details may be missing. I appreciate your understanding. Instead of simply discussing speculative views on Bitcoin, I've shifted the video's concept to focus on an in-depth exploration of current issues. Please let me know in the comments whether you prefer this approach or just talking about coins. I'll make sure to incorporate your feedback into the next video. This was Bichelin. Thank you.